Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Enough to Keep Going podcast. This is episode number 240 for May 5th, 2022, the new next-gen format. That's right. We're switching things up a little bit more again this week, or right now. We'll get to some games, kind of like we did before, and then we'll actually go into some news stories and then finish off with kind of our round robin kind of other gaming stuff that we've been doing this past week or so. No picks plays this week. No, that's not until the end of the month. But we'll talk about that near the end of the show. But with me tonight, before we get started with the games, I have one Mr. Game Logic. Game, how are you doing tonight?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm well. Doing well.
Been a good week of gaming, but it's been a difficult week of gaming.
Yeah, it's been interesting. So it's just two of us again this week. DBQ has some stuff to take care of, so hopefully next week he will join us again. So let's start off with some games that we've been playing this past week. A new game for me. I'll actually start off to get the game logic. Make sure everything's going on the boards there. I actually have been playing Nintendo Switch Sports, which I actually picked up last Friday when it came out, and kind of a sequel, I guess, to the Wii Sports, and I think Wii Sports Resort was the second one that they released. I never played that one, unfortunately. But Nintendo Switch Sports. So pretty much, I'll say, pretty much, it's Wii Sports from back in the day. There's some new games that they have on there, or new sports. Some old ones that return to. So you got your bowling, which we've had in the past. You have tennis, which pretty much play the same. There's a little bit of tweaks, I think, in those gameplays, which I'll talk about in a second. But then you also have, I think that's how you pronounce it, Chambara, Chambara, kind of like a sword fighting game, which that's probably my least favorite. You also have badminton, which I actually haven't played that one yet. But I did watch my son play. It's kind of a faster. Well, some people might think, it's just another tennis, but it's actually a lot quicker gameplay and matches in badminton. Since you always got to hit the ball. Not the ball, the birdie up in the air. You can't let it hit the ground. So there's no bouncing in badminton. And then they're going to be. I think that's it. Actually, was that it? I think there's one more. Can't remember right now, but. They will eventually actually also add golf that's coming out this fall, and I believe that is free for people who already own the game. It might even be for the online, but I'm not sure. But I know if you have the game already, you have you'll get golf also. But so like I said, I mean bowling and tennis pretty much the same. Bowling. I don't know if this changed back from the Wii Sports. And I don't remember if it was a Wii Sports Resort, but obviously just do the bowling motion. But on this one, I don't know, maybe I just forgot. Even though I played a ton of the bowling in Wii Sports, you actually have to hold down the trigger button, which I think you did before, but I thought back in the original game, you actually let go of the button as you throw it. But this one, you just kind of hold it down and keep it held down as you just swing forward. So that was kind of throwing me off at first, and that was kind of my fault because I wasn't paying attention to the prompts that were on the screen when it was telling you stuff. Like, why isn't this working? And finally, I was like, oh, duh, I got to keep the button held down. So that was kind of the only tweak I think that I saw so far in that game. Tennis so far it's pretty much the same as tennis in the past. You know, you can do doubles, you can do singles, and it's pretty much tennis. That was probably my second favorite from back in the day. I actually my favorite was baseball back in the Wii Sports, but they don't have that baseball in this version right now. At least right now, maybe they'll add it in the future. Kind of like they're going to add golf, but soccer was the other one. I'm sorry, that's what the other one I was thinking of, and that was kind of interesting too. But yeah, tennis is pretty good. Like I said before, the Shambari, however you say it, pronounce it. That one was all right. It's kind of like more waggly, and you just kind of like wave around and you pretty much hit stuff. And I think it's supposed to be a little bit more deeper gameplay, but when I was playing with my son, it's pretty much just you're just flailing around. You'll hit each other eventually. So I mean, and there's I think it was supposed to be more technical maybe because they go through the tutorial for each of these sports when you first play, or when anybody first plays, which is actually kind of nice because we had my wife playing too at one point. She was able to do that since she created a new character and went through the tutorial. And you can kind of like block from vertically, horizontally, at an angle and stuff like that. But I mean, it didn't really seem to make a difference because you could just like flail around and you'd eventually hit your opponent. So that one was okay. I think it was kind of like the boxing back in the day. That was kind of the same thing. You kind of just like do the punch in motion and you'd hit each other. So but then the soccer. So soccer's a little different. So it's just I think it's just 1-on-1 right now, and there's the soccer ball is like this huge, like almost actually I think it's bigger than you, size ball, and you can, if you have the leg strap, and I think there might have been a collection where you can actually buy it with the leg strap, which is the same thing that you got when you played was it Ring Fit? So I have Ring Fit, so I can actually use that at some point. So I haven't tried that part out yet. So you kind of just strap it to your leg, and obviously then you can just kick it. But otherwise, when you're just playing with the controllers or the Joy-Con, excuse me, you're just using the sticks, and you do like an up motion to kick, and some other motions to do like dives and stuff like that. So that one's actually pretty cool. I like that one too. That was pretty neat. I was playing that with my son also, and we had a good time with that one. So he's used to play soccer and stuff like that. He's kind of jumps around sports, but since he kind of plays soccer, he kind of knew it, and we were playing that. And then, like I said, I didn't get to play badminton. Unfortunately, I haven't tried that one yet. But when I was watching him play at one point, like I said, it seemed a lot faster than just the regular tennis. So I definitely want to try that out at some point. And then the other one, I'm sorry, I completely forgot. I had to go look these up because I couldn't remember all the sports. But volleyball, that was the other new one. And that one's pretty interesting too. That, as far as I know, that's a new sport. I don't think that was in Wii Sports Resort either. So you can kind of control your character kind of more just side to side motions in this one. You can't just run around the court, but there's a little bit of movement that you can do, so it's kind of nice. But basically, you're just kind of hitting, then setting the ball for your partner and then spiking it. So it's actually pretty neat, and so I'm enjoying that one also. But yeah, and then that's it. Like I said, excuse me, golf is coming out in the fall, so they had golf in the Wii Sports, and I played it a little bit, but I don't know. I was never a big golfer, anyways. So at least sports golfer, I don't mind playing it myself every once in a while for real. But sports golfing just never. That's probably like the one sport I never really got into, either simulation or just like kind of like the Mario Golf I think they have now. Even that one was like it's okay. Like I'll play it, but it's not a huge deal for me, but I'll probably eventually try it out. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It's like I said, it's pretty much Wii Sports just with the new sports, a little bit more, better graphics, obviously. You can have your Miis in there if you want to, or they just have the kind of like the own game character creations that you can create if you want to do that too. So, and when you use your Mii, it's a little funny because like it keeps like the regular character body, the game character body, and it just like slaps your Mii head on there or Mii face. So it's just kind of weird because like it's not proportioned. Like your head's like huge, like when you put your Mii on. So it's just a little weird that I think they did that. I don't know why they just didn't have like the regular Mii body on there, but I guess they didn't want to do two different things or whatever. So, but yeah, other than that, I'm really enjoying it, and just like the Wii Sports, I'll probably play this a ton too, just like I used to. So, and like I said, the new other than the sort of fighting one, the new sports are actually pretty good in there, pretty good variety. So, any questions or comments?
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit. So interestingly enough, I listened to an interview today with Reggie fils-amie about his time as president of Nintendo of America and his time as head of sales and marketing at NOA. And I haven't read his book yet, but he talked a little bit about the argument that he and Miyamoto had about packing in Wii Sports with the Wii. And so, kind of, what are your... So you played Wii Sports. Did you play it as the packed-in game with the Wii?
Yeah, I got it. The initial, when I bought the console. Yep. Okay.
So I want to say...
Yeah, pretty sure it came with every console, like all the time.
I think it came... As far as I know. I thought it... I have a tough time remembering. I thought that it came later. I thought the initial launch console... Maybe I'm wrong. I thought you could buy a SKU without it packed in.
I think later on, but initially I did have it on there. I did have it in there.
Okay.
Yeah, I think later on they did like a Mario Kart. Well, it was only like Mario Kart bundle, like just Mario Kart by itself with nothing else. I thought sure though it came with it.
I'll have to look it up because I want to say I'm 90% sure I didn't buy mine with Wii Sports packed in, and I bought a launch day console. But at any rate, looking back on that legacy, right? It's not a pack-in now, obviously. Right. Did your original attachment to it as a pack, right? And then there were strenuous arguments, and they're still hard today, about the fact that game is listed as like one of the highest selling games on the Nintendo Wii, and I'm like, well, it should be. It was packed in with the console, right?
Yeah.
Like
kind of by default, yeah.
Right. So, what are your feelings about like? Did you feel obligated to pick it up, having played the original? If it was packed in with my console, I never played it because I never used my Wii. My Wii was never like a party console, which is probably why it didn't stay around my apartment at the time, beyond like a couple of years. So, it's a different instance now. I'm sure I guess it's a $60 game.
Actually, no, it is a $40 game.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right, so
that was another reason. That's another reason I wanted to buy it too. But no, to your question, I did buy it because of the I don't want to say nostalgia, but just because I did have prior experience with that franchise, and I always enjoyed it. It was fun to play. Once my son got older, he was able to play it. So, and I was something that I play with my wife too. So we were always playing it. So it was kind of just kind of like you said, like a legacy thing. And like I said, it was $40. So it's not, which is actually kind of surprising to think about it, because Nintendo's, obviously this is a new game, but it still has some old stuff in there. But Nintendo kind of always kind of throws out that full price for these kind of games sometimes, even if like it's a remake, not even necessarily a remake, just kind of throw it out there like, hey, it's kind of the same thing, but we're gonna throw it out there and maybe just up the graphics, but still charge you $60 for it, like it was back then. But surprisingly, this was only 40, which I was actually surprised. I would have got it anyways. I think if it would came out at 60, maybe waited a little bit. But Nintendo games usually hardly ever go on sale, like maybe $10. Maybe 20 at the most, and then that's usually like years away. So I was like, I'm just gonna pick it up anyways.
So, and I missed part of your brief out because I was putting the social media out. But so, is there anything new in this game? So you just talked about how Nintendo kind of always does this thing where they go back and they revise these properties, and they're really essentially at the end of the day the same game. Is there anything new in this, or is this literally like pixel for pixel? The exact same game as that Wii pack-in?
No, there are let me see, 4 new games. So 6 games altogether that you get, and then 4 of those are actually new. So the bowling and the tennis, those are staples from the past. And then the soccer, volleyball, badminton, and chambara. I think that's how you say it, which is a sword fighting game. Those are the 4 new ones. So,
okay,
and then the old legacy golf will come in the fall of this year.
Okay, so this is a significant evolution for an entirely new generation of gamer.
Yeah,
right. And then
as far as I know, because like I said, I didn't play Wii Sports Resort, so I'm not sure. I'll have to go back and look actually while you talk here.
And
what was in there?
And I don't know what Wii Play was, but I guess that was another thing.
Yeah, that was something different. Yeah,
okay. So
that was more like kind of like small party games, not necessarily like WarioWare, but something like that.
Okay, so it wasn't.
They weren't as wacky.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so $40 game, new evolution. Is the game worthy of critical acclaim, or is this pretty much just like it's like a board game kind of add-on that like it enhances the value of your Nintendo Switch, but it's not really like something that's going to be in the discussion of Game of the Year, and it's not something that's going to be held in regard with like other like more kind of Oscar-oriented titles that you would expect to come out this year.
No, not even an Emmy, I'd say. But no, but it's a good party game though. Like if you have your have family over, your friends, you can throw this on just like back in the day when the Wii was around. It's a good party game. So I wouldn't even say it was like top tier Nintendo branded game, but it's just a fun game. So something to throw out every once in a while.
So do you think? I mean, so is it a question like why not put this on Nintendo Online Plus or whatever their service is? Like, is this worthy of being a $40 title?
Well, I think to me it is, just because it does have that new stuff in there. And stuff that I've never played before. So, the gameplay in these games were always pretty spot on. There's, as far as I can tell, there's like no lag or anything like with the motion controls and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean I think it's a worthy game. Like I said, it's not you're not going to get any high rewards or anything like that near the end of the year, but it's definitely a good party and just fun game to play with your family and friends.
Right. And is it only playable as motion controls?
As far as I know, yeah, I didn't see other than the soccer you can do on just using the sticks and the buttons. There's a little bit of motion there, but otherwise, all the other ones, as far as I could tell, I didn't see any other options to just switch to just using the controller by itself. So
okay. And do you play it from third person view or is it like first person view?
No, yeah, all except for the sword fighting one, they're all third person. So. Which, I mean, that kind of makes sense for the fighting game, or the sword fighting, just because it might be a little weird when you're trying to do the motions, if you're third person. Because you can't really, I don't think you can really move in that one either. There's no, like, free movement, or you can, like, use the sticks to move around. It's just swinging, basically. And you kind of knock your opponents back, so they kind of, eventually how you win is you knock the person off. There's, like, a little pedestal you're on. It almost looks like an old American Gladiator, like, stadium. Like, there's just high pedestal that you're on with like water underneath, so you knock your guy into the water, or your character into the water. So kind of what it reminded me of.
So one thing I used to, I wouldn't say complain about, but that I wasn't necessarily super keen on was the battle rhythm and cadence of Nintendo Switch releases. When I was a Switch owner, and granted, I was a particular type of Switch owner. I played mostly like ports of PC titles. So that I could have them in portable format.
Yep.
But regardless, right? But I did play like some of the. I loved Yoshi's. I always want to say Twisted World, but it wasn't Twisted World. Crafted World. Yeah. So I played Yoshi and I enjoyed that title. But like I never, because I'm not a huge Nintendo mascot person, I never felt like there was enough stuff. I mean, and I would be a big Nintendo right mascot person if the game styles and types that came out spoke to me a little more, right? If there was a little more of kind of the Metroid that we got on the Metroid we got on the Nintendo Wii that was like the real first person shooter.
The Prime.
Yeah,
I think it was
Metroid Prime. And so, but we don't, right? So, I don't wind up falling head over heels over Nintendo properties and games. And I was never satisfied with the release cadence on the Switch. So this is a thing that comes out, and I guess it's kind of the precursor ramp into the summer. Are you guys getting Splatoon 3 over the summer?
I think it's not until September, I'm thinking. Let me look that up real quick.
So I guess that's my thing. Like, if I still owned a Nintendo Switch, and I would not be playing Switch sports. So, I mean, would I be angry about, like, not having a big spring release, summer release, especially if Splatoon 3 is not going to be until
it's September 9th.
Yeah.
I mean, because I think they had just pushed it back recently.
So does this feel like a thing that's not really like the big splash title that I would have normally wanted, that Nintendo just pushed out as kind of filler?
Yeah, I wonder, now that you mentioned it, if the way the world is now, obviously, because, stuff's getting pushed back now because of the work from home and all this other stuff that's going on. If this would have been the Mario Golf of this year. So Mario Golf, I believe, came out maybe end of spring, like early summer. So I wonder if that was supposed to be at that point, because this seems like a game that would have been fitted well in there, like beginning of summer. Kids are kind of getting out of school, but obviously, summertime, most of the time kids are outside and stuff. But this is kind of at least a good, you're moving around and stuff, at least in this game. So this does kind of seem like it would have been like maybe a summer release, like early to midsummer release, and it probably would have been a good release at that point. Not, I'm sure it's probably doing fine now, but it is, like you said, it's not like the major blockbuster. And I'm not even sure. I don't even know what else is coming out for the Switch right now, at least anytime soon, like anything major. So we already had Kirby, so that was their big game for like kind of the spring or so. So yeah, this is, and kind of like how you mentioned too before, like, I could have seen them maybe like releasing this for the expansion pass maybe, and doing like a sport a month or something, which might have been a good.
Right.
Yeah, might have been a good idea to do something like that maybe, because that would have obviously given that more value. Right. And there's a little bit of stuff like we mentioned, Splatoon DLC, Splatoon 2 DLC that come out, and there's some other stuff. But yeah, I think that would have been kind of a good idea to release it like that.
Right. I mean, now, here I am talking a bunch of mess about it, and it'll probably be, like, the top of the NPD charts next month. Just like that stinking Ring Fit Adventure was, where, we were all like, that's not going to work.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Those are extraordinary circumstances for that one. So, but, I mean, you never know. This one could be, I could be wrong and be like, hey, maybe this will be the Oscar of Nintendo this year.
Right.
Yeah, since Splatoon 3 is coming out, but...
Nice. All right, man. Well, good deal.
All right. So that was it for me for kind of newish games and kind of bigger games. So how about you? You've been playing some Destiny still? Destiny 2?
I have. So I've had some buddies wrap me into playing a lot of Halo Infinite the last week, which we'll talk about later in the show. But I was bound and determined to continue pounding away at Destiny 2, which is what I had on my schedule before I got the call, right? The bat signal up in the air to start playing some Halo Infinite. And so after I knocked off one night from my Halo Infinite time, I pulled up Destiny 2, and I actually wound up pulling an all-nighter. It was kind of harkened back to my younger years, where I was shutting my PC down and going to bed, and like I saw the sun rising. So, but I could tell that I was nearing the end of the Witch Queen campaign, and I want to say, I think I was playing like Titan. And so I wanted to go ahead and finish the campaign and wrap things up. It was very much, it's the expansion that reminds me more than any of them, between Osiris and Warmind and Forsaken. More than any of them, this reminds me of the original Destiny 2 campaign, the Red War. And so, in very much like vein, the last few sequences of battle, like the last 3 kind of major stages, are strung together in a way that kind of, having played the Red War campaign, I learned the second or third time through that you could jump out of the game, at the end of any one of those kind of last 3 sequences, and the game would return you back to that spot when you came back in. But funny enough, like the instinct that kicked in was that same instinct that kicked in the first time through the Red War campaign, and I got super nervous about like quitting the campaign and bouncing out for fear that I would come back and it would make me replay something that I had gotten through. And so you go in to battle the big bad, Savathun, in these final 3 rounds, and again they're kind of strung and packaged together in a way that makes you feel like you're not supposed to quit, right? Because the respawn limited little sigil comes up on the screen, and you're compelled to stay. And so you get 3 stages of her in various formats. One of them is, and these aren't spoilers because it should be obvious that you're going to fight Savathun at the end of the Witch Queen campaign, and I'm not going to talk about the specifics of how to solve these puzzles, but I think one of them is more kind of a straight up fight, and then the second one especially is kind of this big, super like 3-chamber Rimbaldi device where you have to go and unlock things at different levels of the chamber to get through, and that part was a little aggravating, just because it's not symmetric. At least mine wasn't. And so it's not like a lot of other things like in Destiny 2 where like if you go and do one thing on the left side of the map, then you're going to the exact opposing piece on the right side of the map, right, in the exact same kind of mirrored location to do the thing. And so being exhausted at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I was trying to figure that out. And it was not, it did not come off to me as user friendly. And then you go into the last stage, and that was a little aggravating. Kind of they ratchet up the kind of the Destiny 2 bullet sponge effect to maximum on that level, and there's a little bit of nonsensicalness in how they kind of render the effects. You basically have enemy units that are kind of buffing Savathun at that point, but it doesn't give off the same graphical effect. That happens in other places in Destiny 2 when we're kind of accustomed to that in like typical combat set pieces, but there's a certain graphical effect that normally goes along with that, and that's not rendered in this case. So it doesn't come off as, in those last 2 stages. I think the biggest thing is they are not as intuitive as other combat set pieces in Destiny 2 are, and in fact in certain ways the Destiny 2 paradigm has kind of trained you to think about those combat set pieces in a certain way, and these stages seem to break a little bit from that. So that was a little aggravating, but again, that may have been 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning kind of feelings that I had about it. But the nice thing is that it's over, so as somebody who often, floats onto Destiny 2 and then often floats away without necessarily completing things, it was nice that, here in the first season of the year, I've gone ahead and knocked out that campaign. So we are now in the post-campaign content. I think the season wraps up on May 24th. And so it'll be a launch of the second season kind of as we're going into Memorial Day weekend, which, depending on what's on my gaming slate, might be actually really great. I love Memorial Day weekend games because, you get time to play. I mean, that's probably, as much as we talk about the holiday season, like the games that I value the most, because they probably remind me the most of kind of how I gamed, like when I was in college and when I was younger, are the Memorial Day weekend games, like the 4th of July games, like the Veterans Day games, like those games that come out at those opportune times for those 3-day weekends are the ones that are sometimes, when they're like the introduction for me to that game. They're sometimes the most memorable. So, I'm looking forward to having a good headwind going into the second season. Again, now we're in the post-campaign content, which something that I typically compliment Destiny 2 for, because while we have a lot of shooters that people will argue don't have enough content, one thing that I always feel Destiny 2 does is you not only get like the major campaign, but then you kind of get all these follow-on quests that are tightly coupled and oriented around the initial narrative that you get, and then you kind of get mini quests or mini campaigns for the remaining seasons of the year that kind of formulate a story and a narrative piece as you start the season. So right now, I'm trying to build loyalty or familiarity with Finch, who is the I don't know what I would call him, the errant, misguided ghost that you're introduced to in the season. That introduction is a little bit of run and fetch. And again, it's kind of one of the things that sometimes I bounce off of on Destiny 2, because I'm only going to search for things in so many places or with so much effort when they're supposed to be at a location on the map, and then I go there and I can't for the world, for the life of me, find what the thing is that they're looking for. And so I've kind of bounced off that. I was in step 3 of a quest which sent you to go find not regional chests, but some other kind of chests. And I searched in the first 2 locations, they were marked on the map, and I didn't see them, and I was like, screw that. So I am off to a quest for an exotic, which I think might be a quest from a past season, but it was a little more straightforward. It's that one is, I've already completed half of the quest, and the remainder of the quest is just participate in public events on Europa, which are fairly straightforward. So I think the other part of that quest that I bounced off of was doing patrols, and I'd only found one patrol beacon on the throne world, but it's participating in patrols in this specific kind of geographic sub-region of the throne world, and I was like, I'm not doing that. So, but that's the great thing about Destiny 2, right? Is there's tons of content, and you get options, and you're not always necessarily cordoned or throttled into doing one thing. You can pick and choose. You can go back and do past seasons content. You can do, weekly challenges. There is often a lot of effort to kind of cordon you into Gambit and Crucible. But as long as I can continue figuring out how not to do that, that's fine for me. There'll be enough there for me to scratch at. And then, of course, I could always hop on my other 2 characters and, play the rest of the Witch Queen thing. I think, and I guess maybe that's what I should even go back and touch on a little bit. So, since the whole Star Citizen thing, and then Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War thing, I've swung back and forth, and then getting rid of consoles and going PC only. I've swung back and forth on trying to settle on where exactly I'm heading from a gaming perspective, and I have had instances this week where I was like, maybe I should go back and get a Nintendo Switch again. And I've occasionally looked at, PlayStation 5, and I've been sorely tempted because the Xbox Series X has been in pretty consistent supply on the Microsoft Store, and at Best Buy. I don't know that I found one at Target. I think I've seen them up on Amazon, but Best Buy's at the point now where kind of, I would argue it should have been the whole time, is you can buy one even if they're technically sold out, and you're just put in a queue for when it will be delivered. Which, like I said, they should have done the whole. I don't, just to revisit that point for I don't understand how Apple can sell 30 million iPhones right when it launches, and you're just put in a queue and you just sit and wait for it to show up, but you don't have to go back and play this dumb game of sitting in a queue and trying to buy the thing and not being able to buy it. Eventually you're going to be able to buy it, and you might get it in 4 weeks instead of 2 weeks, but at least you're done with the transaction and you don't have to keep monkey with it. Anyway.
Yeah, like the Stream Deck too. I mean, right. People are waiting, but they're going to wait. That's fine. They know, at least they know they're going to get one eventually.
Right.
I actually saw the Xbox Series S at stores recently in the Target.
Oh yeah,
which is kind of surprising.
Yeah, and you're starting to get some. Well, maybe there's I've seen some special edition and skin ones, which I don't know if we're going to. I know there was a Lego one that they said won't be sold to the general public, but But again, it's to me, it's an amazing console for $299, same cost as the Nintendo Switch. But at any rate, so I've been trying to formulate my playlist and trying to figure out what I'm going to put on it. And one of the things that I've said is, because I haven't, so over these past couple of years since that whole thing started, I have been playing games as a service more, which I previously refused to or didn't, and have higher regard for them in the past. Of course, on this show, we've gone through the transition where those games were pretty much not really allowed into the Gaming Superlative Awards at the end of the year, but now they are. But I've gone back and I have added like the specific ones that I want to play that have kind of become my not bread and butter, but are of the ones that I've tested or ones that I'm interested in, and I've put them in a little section of my playlist that where they won't come off, they'll stay on there. But then I've also said, then as I've gone through that like discovery and search, I've never really tried to manage like season passes and whatnot. So now I've come up with some paradigms and metrics where I'm like, okay, I think my number is 3. I could do 3 battle passes, season passes, and then have enough kind of leftover time for other stuff for the other games that I want to play. And so right now, Destiny 2 is one of those. Halo Infinite's another one. I've still got a slot for a third one. But now I'm like specifically keeping those on a list and specifically tagging the ones that I have the season pass for, and watching when I've hit the point where I've got a third one in the queue and saying no more season passes right after that point. So it's created a different interest where there's a thing that I kind of know is going to be on the list and that I'm going to go back and repeat, and it's kind of I don't know, kind of gives me a notion of kind of a thing that has a lot more adhesiveness, and that is going to get a lot more revisit and replay than I have in the past.
Yeah, and you had mentioned you're going to possibly go back and play other characters. So you have one of each of the other classes that you can play?
Yeah, which I think was what most people do. So I've got 1 Hunter, 1 Titan, and 1 Warlock, and maybe I'm a little more OCD about trying to keep those kind of at parity and not like just having one super character and other kind of reserve characters, but I try and keep them kind of at the same power level. But I probably spent more time this season with my Titan and my Hunter than the Warlock, so he's probably lagging a little. But yeah, but it's not as bad as when I had an account on PC, an account on Xbox, an account on PlayStation, and then and an account on Stadia, and then like would have some characters that like I just hadn't played like in months, So
yeah,
a little easier now.
And then you had mentioned like you're trying to avoid the PvP is well, I guess the Crucible and stuff. But I mean, is there a reason? Because I mean, I know you played like obviously you played Call of Duty and you're playing Halo Infinite now multiplayer. Is there a reason you're avoiding the
it's there are, for me there are some, not every multiplayer game is fun when you solo queue. And if you remember from a few months ago, maybe last year when I talked about it, I was like, that's my big requirement for PvP is like if I'm going to log on a night and just have headphones on, right, and no mic connected, and there's not going to be anyone for me to talk to, probably because the community's toxic, right? Like, it has to be, the game still has to be fun to me to solo queue, and that's mainly oriented around either the progression or just the camaraderie. Now, the difference in Destiny 2 is I do love playing the co-op events, so I'll definitely go, and I'll probably get into it in the week coming up here. Like, I love going and playing strikes, right? Because generally people are friendly and there's camaraderie. If you get, every once in a while you get a player where, when you get killed in a strike, like they won't bother reviving you, right? But for the most part, people will try and revive you. There's always an increased feeling of like unspoken esprit, when you get knocked out. I mean, these public events that I played, people were coming by and reviving me, and I was coming by and reviving them. So it was a great time. But I just the Crucible has never just been something, fun for me. Just in the same way, kind of Halo multiplayer has never been fun for me until now. And so, it's just not something that I enjoy. And then, there are some bounties and stuff that you get that tell you to go play that stuff. So I may wind up playing that stuff, when I need to pursue a bounty. But that will probably be when I get pretty far into a season and have completed all of the quests that aren't a pain in my butt as far as searching around and finding stuff. And then I'll go, because a lot of those are just they're play a Crucible match, not necessarily win a Crucible match. So I won't mind
a little easier.
Yeah, I won't mind just going and like checking the box so I can complete a quest.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, I've had my issues with. I think I mentioned a few weeks ago, or maybe last month. The last time I went into Destiny 2's Crucible and just get destroyed. It's like, oh wow, it's like I'm like way out of my league now from when I played before, and I was decent before. Like I definitely would do better like in Call of Duty or even Halo. But yeah, Destiny 2, it was a different beast somehow for some reason. It's just like I couldn't get my head around like what I was supposed to do, because I was just getting like utterly destroyed. Like I couldn't even get a kill when I was playing the last time. So I don't know what I was doing wrong, but I was like, okay, I'm done with this. But like I said, the co-op stuff was always pretty fun to go through. Yeah. Like you have the big world events that come up, and you can defend an area or whatever you got to do for that. So those are always pretty cool. And
sometimes it's just a matter of like it you have to like it enough to be willing to work at it. And like Destiny 2 has just never hit that tip over point for me. I mean, like I love Overwatch, right? But Overwatch is just one of those games where like it is not fun to me to solo queue in that game. Like it is it is hecka fun when you have other people to go into it with, even if I just have one other person, right, to play with. But like it's just not a game that's fun to solo queue. So I wind up, even though it's a ton of fun for me, I'm not going to rearrange my entire gaming schedule to find a group of people to play that game with, right? So they're not. It's not a matter of Destiny 2 being bad, right, or Overwatch being bad. It's just there's certain games with certain dynamics that lend themselves to solo queuing, and certain ones that don't.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so let's jump out of our main game stories here and jump in some headline news. First up, we got some Microsoft news, and I think you put this one up there, right? These two Microsoft news articles about the cloud, and that you can go into. Basically, they're both about the cloud, really. So if you want to jump into those.
Yeah, and I put these in here, but that does not mean that I prepared. Because this week has been incredibly compressed. And I don't actually know. These are actually a little older, so I'm also not sure why they came up on my radar. It may have been because of my Google feed on my phone, which shows things that are of interest to me, but don't necessarily follow my more stringent, things that posted that day, that I would find from working in the browser. But just to cover the background on it, Microsoft had their earnings call last week. I think what went on concurrently with this, and why I kind of looked at this as maybe something that we hadn't covered, was I think NPD numbers came out around the same time or shortly before, and so we kind of got the word about how we thought sales were up and things like that. But I mean, as far as the entertainment division goes, Xbox hardware revenue was up 14%, with a 4% jump for Xbox content and services, mostly driven by Game Pass. And so this news article from The Verge, posted by Sean Hollister, 6% boost for gaming revenue of $3.74 billion. Satya Nadella, a CEO of Microsoft, talked about the gaming market share on the earnings call as well, and says that 10 million people have now streamed games from Xbox's Microsoft Cloud. And so that's significant for a company that does not typically report numbers, where it is not stringently required. And so, when you think about the other cloud competitors like Google Stadia and NVIDIA GeForce Now, we don't know what those numbers are. PlayStation Now had 3.2 million subscribers as of last May, but that number, is seen as a failure on Sony's part, and so it's one of the reasons why it's being rolled now into the PlayStation Plus. Those are significant numbers, right? And that's 10 million people who have streamed Xbox Cloud Gaming. That is a subset of people who are on Game Pass Ultimate, right? So, now, admittedly, a lot of those were doing it as an experiment, right, to try the system out. We don't know how many of those were literally people who don't own an Xbox, don't own a PC, and had just subscribed to Xbox Game Pass so they could get access to Xbox Cloud Gaming as, a primary gaming resource. Xbox Game subscribers also played 45% more over the past 12 months. And Adela said that adds up to billions of hours across the year. And so year over year, Xbox Game Pass subscribers played 45% more. Which, again, kind of what I just mentioned about Xbox Cloud Gaming, about people kind of jumping onto that as an experiment, maybe arguably a science experiment in some people's case. That's a difference in maturity where people had gotten onto Game Pass as kind of an experiment. And Game Pass has been going on for a long time. I want to say since, 2015? You're muted if you're trying to...
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah,
okay.
I was going to look it up real quick.
So I want to say last week the figure we pulled was that... the first studio acquisitions were in 2017, I want to say, 2017 or 2018. And I thought Game Pass started the year before that. But I'm not absolutely certain. But the point is that, the subscription service is definitely turning the corner from where it was a thing as kind of a science experiment, right? And now is something that is occupying a ton of people's time. Now what I don't know, and I know Microsoft is really great about telemetry, but I don't know that their telemetry is good enough to differentiate, for instance, now that we have kind of the Xbox app, which is essentially, has Game Pass as a significant slice, right, of its UI. I don't know how they record that and how they see that in terms of, right, on PC, I open that Xbox app, and that's generally what I play from as a launcher. If I've bought a game like Forza Horizon 5, but I play via that launcher, does Xbox see that as a Game Pass instance and records those hours as Game Pass consumption? Versus a Halo Infinite where I haven't bought it, right? And then how is that recorded? And then how is that recorded? Well, let me take that back. I have bought the campaign, right? So, but there were multiplayer hours that I racked up before I ever bought the campaign. And so, does Microsoft see me play multiplayer as Game Pass consumption? Does it see me playing the campaign as Game Pass consumption or as a purchase? And therefore, does it include that number in this 45% more, right? So, there's still kind of some questions in here, and I'm not saying necessarily any of those would be wrong, but they would definitely flavor kind of how we view the metrics. So, but at any rate, at the end of the day, it's a good news story for Xbox. The other thing that we wanted to comment on is, again, that 10 million people having streamed games on Xbox Cloud Gaming.
And Game Pass was 2017. June okay, officially right. June.
Yeah. So it's been 5 years, and, in those first few years, it was, again, we knew that we were heading into the end of the, I've been going back revisiting a lot of this history. We knew we were heading back into the closeout of the generation. I felt by that point, even though I bought an Xbox One X, I felt like that by that point, the fight was kind of over, and Xbox kind of admitted that, and what it was focused on was acquiring studios and kind of gearing up and tooling themselves for the next fight with the Series X and Series S, even though we didn't know about it at the time. I felt like, look, what we were going to get at this point is I don't want to say derivative, but what we're going to get is we're going to get sequels that we would expect to get in this console generation 8. But mostly it's going to be about backwards compatibility, games that become available on Game Pass, games that get the kind of mid-gen makeover in the Xbox One X enhancements, right? And that was kind of what formulated the vast majority of our of our content for the back half of console generation 8. So even though Game Pass has been around a long time, I feel like a lot of the arguing about it on Twitter is really a Gen 9 discussion, right? Because I don't know that it was a huge consumption vehicle for the back half of Gen 8. So that number is significant because I think it represents people who kind of like you mentioned, right? And like your approach was last year, like I've mentioned, look, people may buy that $299 Xbox Series S and buy it as a birthday present for little Johnny, and then just say, look, we can't afford to buy games, but let me just buy you this $15 a month subscription, and then you can play whatever games you want, but just don't come asking me for a $120 allowance so you can buy 2 games a month. We're getting you Game Pass instead. So and again, that also shows people are trying to extract their value out of it, right? Because if you play 3 AAA titles a year off of Xbox, then you've made your money. Essentially, you've broken even, because that would cost you $180. But for cloud gaming, again, so cloud gaming was made available as a beta back in 2019. Again, what this article mentions, and this is now an article posted over on Game Developer, which was formerly Game of Sutra. And for some reason, I can't take it back into reader mode, so I don't like that. But by George, I'm not going to try and pronounce your last name, George. Jijishvili, I think is how you pronounce it. But the point is actual usage of Xbox Cloud Gaming kind of remain unclear. We know a lot of people played it, but we don't know for how long. And I think at one point, the way it also worked is sometimes you would try and utilize it and you would be in a queue, so it wouldn't just immediately launch the game in some instances. So, and I don't know how well that has improved. But a lot of dialogue is going around that talks about that Xbox Cloud Gaming, what's behind Xbox Cloud Gaming is an effort to build out cloud infrastructure. And I think that's a mistaken perspective. My perspective from working on the enterprise side of Azure is that Microsoft is building out the cloud because what it's chasing is chasing the 33% market share that Amazon has. It has 22%. And when a enterprise customer signs on, generally speaking, they don't just need a server running in a container in a VPC in the Eastern availability zone. They need 2, right? Because they need redundancy and they need failover, and then they need backups, right? So they put stuff in Glacier. So at the end of the day, whenever Microsoft onboards an enterprise customer, they've got to have twice as much capacity as that enterprise customer might need for their normal day-to-day operations. What that means, though, is that there's a lot of excess cloud capacity that just sits around and wouldn't be used otherwise. I firmly believe that that's part of what is going on with Game Pass, Xbox Cloud Gaming, and then their effort to then to onboard these customers for their cloud-native Azure development environment, and then hosting services. So it's a lot of things to do to onboard customers and create demand signal for utilization of excess cloud capacity that they already have, to not let that go to waste. But then also as a sales path to then onboard, like I said, developers who then want cloud native development environments and hosting services, which would be a reason to build out, additional cloud capacity. So, I think at the end of the day, good news stories. One of the thoughts that has kind of been running around in my head today was, in many ways, the Xbox One was Microsoft's PlayStation 3, right? And so, we've gone through, I would contend that the Xbox One launched at best at parity, but in a tail chase for the PlayStation 2. But they weren't really seen, I don't think, as fierce competitors. And then you had a Sony misstep in the following generation with the launch of the PlayStation 3, and then you had a Microsoft misstep the following generation with the launch of the Xbox One. I want to say in this fourth iteration, we're seeing parity that is as similar as it's ever been to the launch of the original Xbox One with the PlayStation 2. Xbox is still in a tail chase, with, for PlayStation in terms of their installed user base. But, neither one of them really, I would argue, came into this generation making a big, huge misstep. And so it's nothing but kind of, greenfield or maybe brownfield for a better term, for them to each approach, not necessarily having a ball and chain kind of around their neck that they've got to contend with customer ill will to have to overturn. So it'll be interesting as the generation goes on. It'll be interesting to see if Game Pass and Xbox Cloud Gaming kind of yield any fruit.
Yeah, they're definitely, like you mentioned, when Game Pass first came out, I think it was kind of a slow burn there, just because it was a new service, and just trying to get their feet wet, maybe even just testing out what Game Pass was going to be. I don't know, because they didn't really have much on there, and I think it wasn't until the following year, I believe I saw one of the articles, not one of the articles you put up there, but one of the articles I was looking at. Was when they actually started doing it was 2018 when they started doing the day and date for the first party stuff. So, and it pretty much snowballed from there. So it's going to be interesting to see how. I think Game Pass is pretty much a hit now. I don't think you can discount that or try to say it's not a hit. It's going to be interesting to see how if the xCloud part of the gaming can do that type of business, I guess, if you want to say, or just get the popularity now that Xbox has, and maybe because it's part rolled into the Game Pass, and I don't know if they'll ever think of like splitting it off or have to charge extra for it later on if it's like totally solid, because I believe it's still in a beta state, I believe, and right now, to your point, when you're talking about the queues before, I hit that too. Early on, but now you just pretty much get into a game right away. I mean, there's some loading, obviously, but otherwise, you just you get into your game and you're good to go. So they've definitely at least upgraded that part of the service.
Yeah, and I think I've seen that being misquoted around social media too. It seems like there was a commentary about this will be a great way to onboard customers. I guess I need to look at the Fortnite implementation in its rollout on Xbox Cloud Gaming. Maybe the part that I'm missing is, I mean, I know that accessing free-to-play games does not require you to be subscribed to Xbox Live, but as far as I know, Xbox Cloud Gaming still requires you to be subscribed to Game Pass Ultimate. So yeah. I don't know that you're able to access Fortnite for free. It seems like you would still have to be on Game Pass Ultimate to get to Xbox Cloud Gaming Fortnite, but
it's not on xCloud right now, as far as
I think it just got rolled out today.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. I didn't see that. Okay, interesting.
Yep. So I guess that's a piece that we need to research, because, like I said, it seemed like there was a dialogue going around about people onboarding into Xbox Cloud Gaming for free, but that's not been the structure that we've known to date. So
yeah, I'll definitely have to look more into that, because that's pretty interesting. Yeah, I've been out of the loop today, so I haven't really seen any news stories. So that's interesting that they actually did that, and I believe that's the first time they've done that though on any kind of cloud service, because I know Stadia doesn't have it, as far as I know, unless they released it on there too today, or they're going to. I know they have PUBG, which is now free to play. So I don't know how that works.
So yeah, the company announced Thursday that it had partnered with Epic to make Fortnite available on Apple devices through its game streaming service, Xbox Cloud Gaming. So Fortnite is back, but through Xbox Cloud Gaming, not through the App Store. So for people who are on Apple devices who were playing Fortnite that had no other way of accessing it while this whole Epic lawsuit has been going on, can regain it.
All right, that's pretty awesome. Yeah. Maybe I'll try that for my little controller that I have now. All right, let's jump ahead to the next news article. I think DB put this one, but I'll go ahead and or maybe you did. I'm not sure, but I can talk through it. New York has lodged a new lawsuit against Activision-Blizzard, and the new lawsuit filed in Delaware by multiple New York City retirement and pension funds alleges in court something that seemed like an open secret for months, but basically Activision-Blizzard CEO Bobby Kotick hastily arranged a lowball deal to merge with Microsoft, in order to dodge liability for the ongoing lawsuits and dumpster fires. That's your term, still raging at the company. And then they kind of just go into a little bit more detail how he's obviously trying to there's obviously all kind of harassments and discrimination lawsuits and stuff like that, and basically he's trying to get out of those by merging with Microsoft. And then just when in the quote here, and I'm sorry, this is from massivelyop.com, and this is Bree Royce is the who wrote this article. With the announced merger, Kotick will be able to escape liability and accountability entirely, and will instead continue to serve as an executive after the merger closes. Worse, despite his potential liability for breaches of fiduciary duty, the board allowed Kotick himself to negotiate the transaction with Microsoft. The board's decision to entrust Kotick with the negotiation process is inexcusable for the additional reason that Kotick stands to personally receive substantial material benefits. And they kind of just go on, how he's going to, skirt all of this. So, they brought up this new lawsuit for that. So like I said, unfortunately, I was kind of just reading through this earlier before we started. So I didn't get to deep dive into it too much, but any thoughts on this? I mean, do you think anything's really going to happen, out of this lawsuit? They'll be able to catch him somehow.
I mean, I think the truth of the matter is going to be, like, between the FTC, right? I mean, I think at the end of the day, I think Microsoft is benefited by Kotick being punished in some manner outside and away from the acquisition and merger. Like, if Kotick gets his comeuppance and it's handled like that, so if this were me thinking about it from a management perspective, what I would be hoping for would be for the situation to get handled and the wrapping of the knuckles to be handled before I had to deal with it, right? Like, I would hope that this disciplinary measure solves itself before it became my problem, right? So I hope so. I hope that there's enough. I mean, so this is the second state that's jumped into the fray. We've had one federal agency jump into the fray. My hope would be that somewhere in this obstacle course that he has to navigate, that enough would be done that, number one, I mean, I don't know that any of it will be resolved before, right, the FTC investigation has to happen. I should say, we keep saying the FTC investigation, and again, the social media commentary on this kind of aggravates me. It's the Antitrust Division, which is a joint organizational union between the DOJ and the FTC. But yeah, I would hope something happens to him, without impact, out and away from the merger, so that people involved in doing due diligence over the merger and acquisition don't feel compelled to intermix that dynamic right in their decision making.
All right. So move on to our final news story of the night, which kind of, I don't know, for me came out of left field, and that is Square Enix selling off their Western game development studios, which includes Crystal Dynamics, Eidos Montreal, and Square Enix Montreal. Which I didn't realize there was both. I didn't realize they had both Eidos and Square Enix one. To the Embracer Group, which is I didn't realize they were a Swedish company too. Maybe that was mentioned, back in the day, but I just didn't realize. Excuse me, they're from Sweden. Not that a big difference, but so they, the Embracer Group, they have a lot of assets from THQ and Nordic Games also. So they're adding. From this deal, we got some pretty big games. We got Tomb Raider, Thief, Deus Ex, and then some other like smaller franchises, which I didn't get a chance to look up right now. But I don't know. I know like Square Enix always, and they kind of mentioned this in this article, is from Axios, I believe is how you pronounce it, and from Steven Totillo. They always. And I know with the Tomb Raiders too, especially, they always kind of, I want to kind of say this gracefully, but they kind of poo-pooed basically, like even though they sold like millions of copies of the Tomb Raiders, the new reboot Tomb Raider series, they always were like, you know what, even though it sold like millions, which we didn't really know until like later on, they're always like, oh, this is kind of a failure. So I don't know. I always thought that was kind of weird, and maybe it's. Like I don't know like what their expectations were for these franchises. Like they weren't going to hit like Final Fantasy numbers or anything like that. So I don't know if that's what they were trying to compare it with, which is kind of weird because obviously they're different animals, they're different genres. But I always found it interesting that was like their main reason. Obviously that these games weren't selling what they were expecting to. So it just. I don't know. It's just kind of weird, but and obviously with Eidos Montreal, they just released Guardians of the Galaxy, which seemed to at least have critical acclaim. I'm not sure how the sales numbers were. I think they were good, as far as I know. I don't remember seeing anything like concrete. So,
now the word on the street up until this point is that the game did not sell well, and that's one of the reasons why it wound up on Game Pass, was because.
Okay,
I figured. I mean, you look at when it came out. That there at the tail end of the year. People were distracted playing other games, and people were not convinced about that game.
Right.
For some reason, I think part of it was there was this mystical yardstick of comparing it to Spider-Man and Insomniac, and I guess Insomniac has gotten this gilded view of people seeing them as the Marvel studio, which I just think is weird off of one game.
One character.
Yeah. So, at any rate, it wound up not playing well in the market. There was a lot of doubt on it, despite what I felt was a good showing. And I can't remember which show it was displayed at, whether that was an E3 Summer of Games thing or one of the States of Play or one of the Xbox events, but at any rate, I thought it had a good showing, particularly in terms of the banter, which is like the narrative banter between those characters is one of the most significant features of that game, and innovations, because I've read a little bit into the way that was implemented from a technical perspective, and how AI and machine learning were applied to help kind of script some of those things out. At a degree of volume that's significantly greater than the narrative, in packaged in other games. So, but unfortunately, it didn't play well, in terms of that yielding directly attributing to sales.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I kind of figured that since it did jump in Game Pass so early, it was pretty a few months afterwards. So, It could have been also because of even though they were different studios, but because of the Avengers, Crystal Dynamics did the Avengers, and actually IDOS Montreal did Guardians of the Galaxy. But people might have been a little bit gun shy on because of that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean that absolutely played into the dynamic. Is despite the hopes that a lot of us held on to, that we knew it was a different studio and therefore hoping that it wouldn't be the debacle that the Avengers was. I think 2 or 3 rings out in terms of the gaming community who doesn't pay attention to that kind of stuff just saw it as a Square Enix game and was like, yeah, I'm not doubling down on that after what we got the last time.
Yeah, but which is kind of weird because it did review very well. So Guardians of the Galaxy I'm talking about. So it's kind of weird well, once again, we don't know what Square's expectations were on this one. So,
and I think I think it reviewed above average. I don't know. I mean, I think it's an 80 on Metacritic, and it may have slipped to a 79. Okay. So, it's tough to tell. 80 is my personal kind of threshold for where I'll invest the time in the game, and I don't know how other gamers see that, or if they just saw, a mixture of reviews out there, obviously some of which would not have been like super favorable in terms of the gameplay. So,
yeah. And this is one thing it's probably not a popular view, but I like the Avengers, at least the single player story. I know like the whole them trying to do like this Destiny thing, excuse me, or game as a service thing kind of backfired on them. But the single player I thought the story mode was very solid, very well written and well acted. Now, yeah, I had my reservations at first because the characters are slightly off. Oh, there are like I kind of always think about how back in what is it, Spaceballs, where there's that one shot where you see like the main characters kind of jump through a doorway and then they show them and it's like they're stunt doubles. That's what I kind of think about when I'm looking at the Avengers characters in this game. But just the story overall and the acting I thought was really good. I didn't get to finish it yet, so I don't know how it ends up, but what I played of it, I thought it was really good. And, I think it gets a little bit of a bad rap just because of the play as a service side and kind of story just kind of got lost in it. So I don't know, maybe they could have just released it as the story mode and kind of bring all that other stuff, in later or something. I don't know, just kind of, lessen the blow. But I guess, they didn't really know that like that was going to happen. So,
well, it's very much kind of the same kind of marketing problem that I mentioned with Death Stranding, right? It's just a game that has content and value that was just not conveyed, right, via the marketing vector. The difference with Death Stranding is I feel like they did that to themselves, whereas, I don't know that the Death Stranding marketing undoing was done by the development studio itself, right, and by Kojima himself.
Yeah.
I don't know that the studio can really be blamed for, how the Avengers went down. I think they did the best, that they could. But you look at the voice talent on that; it's got an incredibly high caliber voice acting cast. You had Nolan North and Troy Baker, right, on the same project. Yeah. You had Laura Bailey, Travis Willingham, right? You've got, Jennifer Hale. I'm hard pressed to. I don't know. In fact, I don't know of a project where you have all of them congealed on a single project, right? Ashley Birch. She came in the DLC, but a lot of the narrative stuff has some of the greats of voice acting, and so. But again, and DBQ mentioned the single player, the single player campaign stuff is great. But again, that's just a thing that wasn't messaged right in the right way because there was such an overabundance of messaging the follow-on campaign content, right, in the games as a service stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And just to kind of get back to the article here, just a news story. So the whole deal itself was only, I shouldn't say only, but it was $300 million, which is expected to finish. The deal is supposed to wrap up, I believe, sometime in July or September, they're saying here in the article. No, I mean, I, I don't know. Like they're saying here that it was like a shockingly small amount, for what it is. But I mean, yeah, you got Tomb Raider, and you might have these Marvel properties, but then you have Thief and Deus Ex is, I guess, is a fairly well known game series, I suppose. But they're not like super top tier. It's not even like a Bethesda. I don't want to say quality, but like games that are well known and stuff like that. So I mean, I think the 300, the big deal like going around the price is like it seems about right. I mean, I guess. I mean, it didn't seem like off to me or anything. So I don't know. I think that some people make it a bigger deal than it actually is. Maybe just because of the recent deals lately. Like Bethesda and obviously like Activision and Blizzard. I mean, that's like 70 billion. So I mean, that's a whole different beast. So I mean, that's kind of unfair to compare this deal with that. But and then just kind of looking forward to the future. Crystal Dynamics is still working with Microsoft on the Perfect Dark game that they're what was it? Not the Coalition. I always forget that company's name. That's doing it. It's a newer one. I didn't say here in this article, but I forgot.
The Initiative.
The Initiative. Okay, yeah, I knew it was like be something. Piece of weird titles. And then Eidos Montreal. I'm sorry, Tomb Raider had recently, I believe, Crystal Dynamics had teased, I guess, that they're working on something, but they haven't really officially announced what the next Tomb Raider series is going to be about, or what it's going to when it's going to be released or anything like that. So, but that still looks like it's still going to be worked on.
Yeah, I think the other thing that's important to mention is what did not go. I think a lot of gamers ran away with the short lead, thinking that this was everything. It was not, and so Just Cause is still retained by Square Enix, outright, as well as Outriders and Life is Strange. And so it is feasible that deals could be brokered where those studios still wind up developing those games, but they will be published by Square Enix. It is potentially more likely that a different studio would work on those games. I guess Outriders' games is a service, so who's the dev studio behind that? I've never paid attention to it, really.
I don't remember. I can look it up here real quick. But that was interesting that I mean, if you think about it, like Outriders and Life is Strange, those properties, I mean, they usually do fairly well, and especially Outriders, which is kind of, I think, a surprise to a lot of people. People Could Fly, that was the developer of Outriders. But I mean, I guess makes sense. If something's doing good, you want to keep those properties, and with your company. And I guess that's kind of weird too. Like when I first saw that, like I didn't realize, like you said, I didn't realize that. Like there's some stuff that obviously they could just keep, some IPs that they can just keep, obviously, since they had owned them, initially anyway. So it's just interesting that it was kind of like, hey, we're selling this off, but you know what? We're going to keep these few things for ourselves still. So kind of surprised on Just Cause though, because I mean that one hasn't really. I mean, they've probably sold fairly well the last couple, but I think the last one wasn't like totally.
The last one wasn't,
a hit.
Yeah, so. The last one wasn't great, but I mean that the studio that does that is also not a Square Enix studio. I don't know if they're. It would be weird if they're independent because that's a fairly large game, but so I'm not sure what.
Avalanche, right? The developer.
It's a weird thing because I think they're one of the things where there's like an Avalanche Studios and then there's also an Avalanche Entertainment, and they're two different entities. Or I could even be wrong. I think I've screwed it up because I think they may develop that game on the Avalanche engine, but the name of the studio is something different. So there's somewhere in there's something weird, goofy pop culture mix where I've dorked that up in the past and can't keep it straight. But Don't Nod, who does Life is Strange, is not a Square Enix studio. As far as I know, they are independent.
Okay. Just published by Square.
Well, yeah, but it would be severely weird, right? For a different. I mean, I think Square Enix holding on to that was for them to retain the publishing relationship with Don't Nod. So I would assume that Don't Nod would continue doing those games if there are going to be any more games in those series. and they will continue a relationship with whatever the name of that studio is that does Just Cause.
It's Avalanche Studios.
It is Avalanche Studios. Yeah. So there's it's an Avalanche Studios and an Avalanche Entertainment. And Avalanche Entertainment was just acquired by someone as well in some other deal.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it gets confusing. Kind of weird.
No. It's okay. So if I'm not mistaken, I think Avalanche Entertainment is the one that's doing Hogwarts.
Oh, okay.
And is a studio that really doesn't have a great track record, and it's I think where I've come across them, I'm pretty sure where I've come across them is when I pulled the thread on the whole Hogwarts thing. I was like, I don't understand why people are so super excited for this, because that studio hasn't really done anything of great, critical acclaim or anything. So we'll have to loop back and double check that. But yeah, so those three properties won't be going along with the sale.
Okay. All right. I'm just looking at it here right now. Okay, I'll look at it. I think they're owned by WB. Yeah, Avalanche, I believe. The other Avalanche, which makes sense. Yeah, because they're doing Harry Potter. All right. So that's it for the news. If you want to jump into, you were mentioning Halo Infinite. You were playing earlier. Some multiplayer.
Yeah, so it's a weird state of being. Man, this is there's so many things around Halo Infinite Season 2. We talked last week, or I mentioned how I kind of had these high expectations for the Xbox Gaming Showcase right on June 12th, because as we mentioned earlier in this show, it's been 5 years, right, since the initial since Game Pass, and then the initial studio acquisitions, I think in 2018 actually. And so, there's been a long time ramping up to this promise. And Halo Infinite Season 2, the drop of that has to definitely be seen as kind of a ramp-up precursor to go into that show. And we talked last week about how, Halo Infinite is not a good news story right now. Fallout 76 is not a good news story right now. And those are two PR things that they're going to have to surmount kind of going into that showcase, or else it's going to fall flat. And Halo Infinite, unfortunately, is just not an example of 343 putting their best foot forward. There was server instability 2 nights before when I was on, and I am relatively convinced that was them seeding new content out onto the servers. Because I don't believe there's any way in the world that they took the servers down for 1 hour on launch day and deployed everything, and then brought everything back online. I think a lot of that had to be preceded, whether or not they were canary deployments or, they were just tests and prod, deployment tests and prod, whatever. But they were clearly doing something behind the curtain 2 nights before. And so I had expected a relatively smooth deployment, actually, on launch day. And so after the 1 hour of downtime, they didn't come right back up immediately. There were problems with people gaining access to the content. I think they resolved them in relatively the first hour post-launch. So I guess that is kind of a good news story from a DevOps perspective. But, at the end of the day, there were still problems. Desync is still a problem. We had problems getting into matches. I had tons of problems, and now as I look back at it, I don't know that those problems were all... I mean, they may have been local problems, but they were problems tied to the game. I had problems launching. I had problems downloading the update. It not recognizing that the game was not installed on the C drive, which again just has not been a problem with Xbox Game Pass games or Xbox games at all out of that launcher for quite some time. And so I kind of had to struggle with all types of workarounds and restarts, and then finally got the game going. It's super weird to me. I don't know why or how Halo Infinite can launch multiple instances on a single desktop PC, but at least the day of the update, it was incredibly slow to launch, and so on a few occasions, I tried to launch it a second time, and what I wound up with was 2 instances of Halo Infinite running, which I just don't understand. But But
did you try multiple PCs too, or just the one?
I just tried it on the one. So I'm sure I'll get a chance to try it out here on another PC and just kind of see how it plays. I would hope that by the time I try it out on another PC, all of this stuff will have settled out.
Yeah.
But it's still plagued by a lot of the same problems. It still, in my opinion, has some UI problems with attaching things from the battle pass. You have to dive 3 levels down in the UI to attach a helmet attachment, and I'm like, you can't even see that you have the helmet attachments until you're like 3 levels down in the UI.
I thought that was just me. I'm glad that you're mentioning this.
I
thought it was like I had a hard time finding like from the first season's battle pass. Like, where's the stuff that I unlocked? Like I said, I unlocked it, and some stuff I just never could even find. Like I'm assuming it's there, but I just like, all right, well, I'll find it eventually.
Yeah. Like you can't. Either you can't equip or it's not super intuitive. I thought I found a workaround for this, but I mean, at face value, you can't equip stuff from the shop. And so the battle pass shows up in the shop. It doesn't show up in the customized UI. And then when you go into the shop, you can't equip stuff from there. So you literally have to memorize what you've unlocked in the shop screen, flip back over to the customized screen, dive who knows how many levels down into a specific piece of armor that you can equip to find the customizable enhancement. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. Now, admittedly, in Call of Duty, I had to do a thing where when you got a weapon unlock, like a weapon skin or weapons or a weapon mod, or you bought one from the store, I will admit it was sometimes a problem where you would have the thing presented when you first unlocked it, right? And then there was no necessarily intuitive way. Well, let me take that back. In COD, though, you're always, when you flip back to the equipment screen, there's always a pip or an icon that tells you that there's something new there for you to go look at. You don't have that in Halo Infinite. So again, on Halo Infinite, I've gotten like a helmet attachment and a, I forget what they call them, but like a little video render, like an effect render, like for my gauntlets. Like, but when you flip back to that a customized UI, there's nothing there that tells you, oh, hey, this thing has an unlock underneath it. So you always have to dig for that stuff, and it's not always intuitive. Like, it took me a while the first time to figure out, like, okay, I got a shoulder pad unlock. It's buried underneath. It's in the arm. It's in the armor menu, and then it's in the specific armor that you actually have equipped, and then it's go to the specific piece that's applicable to. When you get a shoulder unlock, it's not always necessarily super intuitive whether or not it's the left shoulder pad or the right shoulder pad. So then you have to dig down in there, and then you can find the attachments, right? And I'm like, I should just be able to, especially on a PC, I should just be able to mouse over that stuff. That stuff should come up as a pop-up, and I should just be able to navigate to it right there and equip it. Like, so, that, quite frankly, that bothers me more than just the fact that there aren't more maps. They added new maps, and again, I'm a map guy. As I mentioned a few weeks ago, I would have preferred more maps. But I was going to just eat the fact that there were only 2 maps, but they're only available in certain modes, and they're modes that I don't even like. So I think one's available in Arena, and one's, I think, a big team battle map. So I'm like, why can't you play Slayer on these maps? Like, it's just, there's a lot of the implementations that are kind of preposterous, and for veteran players who have been on the Halo franchise for 20 years, they're big turnoffs. On Team Slayer, there is a mode, the modality for that basically splits between 2, where one, you start with the battle rifle as the basic weapon, and the other one, you start with whatever the thing is called, the auto rifle, right? The regular rifle that you normally start off with. You can't choose, so those are theoretically randomized. It's randomized amongst a list of, like, I think, like 12 or 14, like, maps. So, like, 6 or 7 are battle rifle start, and 6 or 7 are auto rifle start. But you can't choose. And so, like, the first night, we got, like, 5 matches in a row that started with battle rifle. Now, as a new player, the way I look at that as, like, some of these, like the gunfight mode in Call of Duty, or like when they seed like a limited time mode on top of gunfight, which is like gunfight snipers. I'm like, okay, I don't like snipers, but I admit and I understand that if you force me to play with snipers, I should natively just get better, right? And when I play in those modes on Call of Duty, a lot of times I will hit challenges, right, that I don't normally do because I don't normally carry a sniper. And so I acknowledge to a certain extent that battle rifle mode is going to force me to get better at battle rifle. And as a new player, I'm okay with that, right? I eventually settled. I had to get over my crankiness about it at first, right? And then give it some thought. But two things. Not every new player is going to be dissatisfied with that and then is going to do what I did, which is kind of think about it overnight, like sleep on it, and then come back and be okay with it. Lots of new players are just going to see that and go, right, and like be aggravated the entire time. Veteran players are going to be very aggravated because they're like, I know Halo, I've been playing for 20 years, I don't need you dictating to me that I have to start off with the battle rifle, I prefer the other rifle, and I'm fine if you randomize that in an event, but don't dictate it to me. So, I think at the end of the day, it's a launch that does not serve in their benefit as a ramp-up into the 6/12 event, and it's just going to further increase the stink, right, that they're going to have to surmount, which is just really, everything financial is a good news story right now, right? Game Pass, Xbox Cloud Gaming, revenue, units sold, even though Aaron Greenberg is pointing to VG charts for that, whatever, right? Everything's a good news story, except the actual games that they have out, which, is going to be a problem. I mean, I shouldn't say except for the games they have. There are lots of game stories that are good news stories, like Forza Horizon 5, and some of the other things, but, their flagship property in Halo Infinite is stinking the place up right now. I'm not going to say that's 100% deservedly so. 60, 70% deservedly so. Some of it is just a matter of taste and a matter of the community, but at the end of the day, it doesn't... Halo Infinite Season 2 did not serve the strategic need that I felt like they needed to have from a marketing perspective, as far as being the setup into 6/12.
Yeah, that's, like I said, I didn't even know like the Season 2 had such a terrible launch. Once again, I was out of the news loop, and I know because going into this, like there was already some like rumblings just on Season 1 and just the game in general, just just little things, I guess, that in the playtime. And they were kind of like touting the Season 2 as like, we have these new maps, we have these new modes, and it was going to be great. But I mean, that's kind of surprising because I remember playing Halo 5, the multiplayer on there, and it seemed to be pretty. I never remember having any problems playing Halo 5 multiplayer, and I guess there wasn't really seasons back then, but there's some other different modes that they had. Like they had that, I don't even know, I forgot what it was called, but kind of like almost like a big team battle, but you're actually battling like AI too within the battle. So it was kind of a back and forth kind of a thing. And I actually really liked that mode. I was kind of sad that they don't have. It doesn't seem like they have that mode down in this one. And maybe I don't know. There's just too much. They're going to the the service kind of deal for this game. But I don't know. I guess it's just because maybe it's the new thing. They're just having so many problems. I guess I don't know. Like I don't know if I don't remember there being a battle pass in 5, so I don't think they had done it back then.
Yeah,
I know in MCC, I think they do seasons, and that might be like a totally different team that's working on that one too. So it might be.
Yeah, I don't think they do. I mean, they have unlocks, but I don't think they have. They don't have seasons in the same way that they're doing it now. It's not.
I think it was just like a whole armor thing they had in 5.
Yeah,
like you got like specific armor, like a whole set.
And in some ways the implementation is the same because there's stuff that you unlock that I think is persistent. But it was kind of amazing to me, even on launch day, that like I saw tweets from people who play Halo Infinite who were surprised that they were unlocking stuff for Season 1 and Season 2. And I'm like, I know that. Again, we pay attention to the news cycle. We play attention to the minutia, in terms of details, and I knew that one of the big things about Halo Infinite is the fact that differentiates them from other multiplayer, online PvP games is that the battle passes are persistent. And so if you bought the Season 1 battle pass, eventually, theoretically, you should unlock everything on the battle pass because it's going to live forever and you're always going to be able to unlock it. I'm still very interested and curious to see what the technical implementation is going to be of that 5 years from now, right? And I expect that Halo Infinite is going to kind of have to do the vaulting thing that Destiny 2 has done. Because I just don't know what it looks like when you're, 5-6 years down the road and you're unlocking like 7 battle passes worth still of content. Or whether they've just assumed that you'll have unlocked, Season 1 and Season 2 and stuff by then. But what was funny to me is that people who were theoretically playing, have spent time in Halo Infinite, didn't understand that was a thing. And while it's probably my normal tendency to put that on gamers not paying attention, there's a part of me that has to say, I don't know that 343 and Microsoft have really messaged that very well if people aren't explicitly clear on that. So, yeah, it's a thing. I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
Well, before, I thought they had like come out because I remember initially when they had mentioned the battle pass, and there was a big, I don't want to say controversy, but a big hubbub about oh, they're gonna do battle pass and all this, but then they came back around, and I thought they had explained it correctly, but maybe they didn't. But no, I was gonna ask, did you buy either of the battle passes, either 1 or 2, Season 1 or 2?
I did, and I can't remember if
have you bought both or just the first season.
I've bought both, but I can't remember what I did at the beginning of Season 1 or if I just already had credits. I know for Season 2 I already had credits so it was just like a Fortnite thing to me at that point. I just expended credits I already had in the bank to buy the Season 2 battle pass. And I'm not sure if I bought some amount, at the beginning that I know that I didn't spend. I don't know that I spent any credits in Season 1 for unlocks. So,
did you have you unlocked that whole season?
No,
that first
no.
No, okay.
And I should say, I don't buy unlocks, so I never use the V-Bucks or whatever the equivalent is to unlock things that are in the battle pass. But I may go to the store, right, and get something. But I never unlock the levels. Right. I play through and earn all the levels. Right. But in Season 1, I know that I didn't, because the unlock system seemed very Byzantine to me, and how you attach stuff seemed very convoluted to me, and I was like, I'm not spending money in the store when I don't even flipping understand how the progression system works. So, but for Season 2, I like I said, I had the credit, so I just spent the $10 equivalent of credits to get the battle pass.
Does it seem, I don't want to say easier, but does it seem a little bit better now, the experience system? I haven't played since the beginning of the first season, so
no. I mean, it's still it's
about the same.
It's still it's like milking a congested cow, as far as how it drips and drops XP out.
Yeah.
But I have not at this point. So I recognize that as a thing, but it has not been a thing that I'm up in arms about, right? I look at each of these games, and you and I played bunches of them, right? So I look at Fortnite, I look at Call of Duty, I look at Halo Infinite, and you play Rocket League and some of the other ones. And what I feel like I've seen is I think some gamers have this impression that everybody's on a quarterly battle pass system, and they are not. Everybody does them differently, and they're all at different battle rhythms, and they all play differently because certain games you get tired of that content at different rates. So I don't expect all battle passes to align to some magical quarterly system as if that's the right thing to do for every battle. The Call of Duty community would flip the heck out if those seasons are not every 3 months. I'm not sure exactly what they are, but they're not on the same battle rhythm. So I expect them all to be different, and I expect every game to kind of try and find its stride, and I expect every game to kind of jockey and throttle back and forth with what that fit is. So, why yea verily 6 months might be too long. I don't know what the answer is, and I don't necessarily know that the answer is just for them to flip to the Destiny 2 model. I think the answer is for them to find out, in and of themselves, in conjunction with their community, right, in collaboration with their community, coming to an understanding of what the right fit is, and then aligning their cadence, right, and release rhythm to that. So I haven't gotten just immediately outraged about the 6 months, but I don't feel like 6 months is the right answer. I feel like something else is the right answer, but I don't necessarily know that like the 10-week timeline of Call of Duty or the quarterly timeline of Destiny 2 is the right fit either.
Yeah, I mean, of all the ones I've played, like you mentioned, I've played them all. I played Apex is the same thing, and PUBG started to do that. I haven't really played PUBG in a while, but I know they started doing seasons too. I'm not really sure what their timing is, but yeah, I know Apex and Fortnite and Rocket League, they all do the quarterly, every 3 months, which I think that's fine. I mean, I would rather have them like spaced out differently though. Like I don't want to have like all three like dropping January 1st and next 3 months the next one. So I like them kind of spaced out and staggered. That's a little bit better. And I don't know if they look at that actually like between other games. I would think they would, just to kind of cover themselves. Like you don't want to be, you don't want Fortnite to be, in conjunction with even with their own game, because Rocket League now they own Rocket League, or the company Psyonix. So you don't want to be messing with that schedule, or even with a competitor like Apex and like trying to fight for the money, because obviously people come and go. Like I do the same thing. Like I'll jump on Fortnite for like a month and a half when the season begins and grind out like at least halfway through my levels, and then I'll kind of drop off for like a month, and then I'll come back that last month to to finish it off. I mean that's just what I do, but I've seen that a lot happening too with other battle passes and with Fortnite. So for me personally, I kind of like the quarterly every 3 month one, but and that kind of changes. Even Fortnite's done like 4 or 5. I think they even did us like a 6 month one time. I mean, now obviously that was the thing during the pandemic, so there was other circumstances. But I mean, as long as they can like give out the content, I don't see a problem with it. But it sounds like with Halo at least, might be a little bit of a problem. And they just need to do, they just need to do some UI cleanup too, and like you said, just show us, or maybe make it a little easier for the unlocks when we get them and all this other stuff in it. And I know you mentioned like what they're going to do in the future, like 4 or 5 years from now, if they're still doing this like the same way. Like how is that going to look when you got like 6 unlocks all of a sudden just popping up? Like if you haven't like played that in a while, or something's happening. I don't know if they really have to. I don't know if they have to. Do they like, because you mentioned Destiny and how they sunset stuff, but do they actually sunset like cosmetic stuff, or is that just like the guns that come out? Like they'll kind of bring back and take out guns.
So Destiny 2 is mainly about vaulting. So I was going to say it's mainly about vaulting content. So they have vaulted adventures, right, and quests and stuff that you could go on, and wholesale campaigns, right, and kind of quest and adventure and patrol content that was associated with those. They've vaulted those by actually just eradicating certain planets from the universe, which is a thing to do. I don't disagree with that, right? I mean, like and there are people who were aggravated at that, but I'm like, look at Star Citizen, right? And they are attempting to implement, right, a galaxy on a massive scale, and obviously that causes problems, right? Now, EVE Online does implement that galaxy at a massive scale, but EVE Online doesn't have the depth of mechanics that a lot of these other games do. It's kind of simplified, like space combat model, and it's really, and a lot of it's driven by, I want to say it's kind of driven by like spreadsheet kind of physics. That's probably an oversimplification of it, but I just feel like it has a ballistics model that doesn't need to be anywhere near the fidelity of like a first-person shooter. So, the reality is I think there has to be some control of scale. And I think when games like this develop and include content, right, that can stretch to infinity, like obviously a game engine isn't going to scale like that, and the servers aren't going to scale like that. So I feel that vaulting modality is kind of a thing that we're going to have to kind of expect, and like something has to be dealt with. Now, you look at Warframe, which I haven't dug into, right? Warframe has been in service since, I think, 2009. It's been going on a very long time, and as far as I know, they haven't had to vault content, but they may have done something else that was similar, so I'm not sure. So from a cosmetic perspective, the difference with the Halo Infinite approach is that so the difference, at least let me talk about the difference between that and Destiny 2. The difference with Destiny 2 is you do not have access to all of your cosmetics at any one point in time, right? In terms of pieces of armor that you can equip, you have a maximum of 9 units, right, per any armor piece, and the rest of it, if you've kept it, has to be in a vault. So the most that any rendering engine would have to juggle is 9 pieces times, I think you have, was it helmet, chest, gauntlet, leg armor, boots, whatever, and your little your cosmetic add-on, right? Whether that's kilt basically or an armband or whatever. So 9 times 45, so like 45 pieces of cosmetic, things that have to be rendered as cosmetics. And then you can skin them with any kind of shader, which is just a palette swap, so there's no problem for an engine to kind of juggle that. So the problem with the Halo engine and that customization, and again, you're just customizing before a battle, but like from an inventory perspective, right, as of today, it would have to have the capability of representing your entire inventory. Now, because of the way Halo's chosen to deal with it, there are easily 15 kind of cosmetic pieces within the sub-menu of any piece of armor. And then you're going to have various attachments that are available in there. And then, the color is, the shader is kind of looked at as a piece in and of its own that then gets kind of universally applied to the armor. So maybe that's not a problem. But, it's just, at a certain point you're going to hit, you're going to have a number of suits of armor. They're all going to have kind of 15 pieces of individual articulation. Each of those 15 pieces is going to have who knows how many variants that are available for it, and it just seems like it's at some point it's going to become a way overly convoluted model to have to try to render on screen. And even if the Slipstream engine can handle it and the hardware can handle it, the problem is going to be how do you handle it as a user, right? Like as it is now, I kind of hit an overload point where like for shaders on Destiny 2, I so glad that Bungie just allowed us to have access to all of them, kind of all of the time. But I definitely hit points now where, as I'm customizing armor on any given night, like I isolate myself to like a page of the shaders, right? And I just apply shaders from that one page. I have 4 pages of shaders, right? But I just ignore 3 pages worth of them on any given night, right? And so at a certain point, there's a cosmetics overload threshold that's feasible to where it doesn't matter. And at that point, you start running into a customer dynamic where you start losing customers, right? Because if the only thing you're chasing is cosmetics and you eventually hit a point where you have so many cosmetics that it doesn't matter, one of 2 things happens. Either you actually just get interested in playing the game, which I would argue is what you should have been interested in the first place, right? The gameplay mechanics, the cosmetics are just an add-on, right? Or you're like, it doesn't really matter. like this progression like doesn't really matter to me, and that's the customer that you get that floats off and goes and plays something different.
Yeah, I mean, I see that with Fortnite because they have a ton of they have a bunch of cosmetics, but it's not as specific like in Halo. Like you could do like right shoulder, left shoulder, and armband and this armband, and foot, and boots and stuff like that. It's more kind of the whole outfit. But then you have the back bling, you have the glider. And they did do a cool thing where you can they have like profiles now that you can do. And I think there's like they upped it to like 50 now or something. Yeah. So you can create your own sets of stuff, which I've done because I have way too much stuff on there now that I don't want to scroll through like a crap ton of pages to find something.
But a big thing that's so huge on Fortnite is you can make all that stuff randomize, right?
Yeah.
And so I like the unlocks you get in Fortnite. But I love even more the fact that I don't have to cognitively worry about it. I just put all that stuff on randomize, and so for me, it's a big surprise to me every time I launch into a match because I don't know what the heck I'm going to be outfitted in, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, that's a cool thing. I didn't even remember that I had that, right? And in my mind, again, I might be mind tricking myself, but in my mind, the machine and the algorithm are taking care of my OCD need to use everything that I have. And now I don't have to cognitively worry about that, and so that's not a load on me. So I can just focus on playing the game and just enjoy the cosmetics that I have.
Yeah. I mean, I've done the same thing. I mean, I have a profile just called miscellaneous where I just literally just put everything at random, and then I have a bunch of other ones like there's a bunch of Marvel stuff and video game stuff that I've done that I want to have in separate in profiles. But yeah, I mean, you kind of think, oh, that must be easy, but no, it's not. I mean, you got to go back in there, and especially if you've never done that before, it's gonna be kind of hard to set that up and do all that, and then you got to worry about testing it because there has been times in Fortnite where they've just on like a short basis they've like vaulted a piece of cosmetic stuff just because like maybe as a weird animation that was like doing something weird like a cape or like a flaming head or something, or something that was off that they had to vault. But they obviously eventually brought it back after fixing it. But it's just it does get a lot too much at some points, even in Fortnite. So, but it's going back to Halo Infinite. It's just gonna be interesting to see like how this all pans out. And I was gonna ask you, I know they did like. You mentioned the maps, and there's, I think, new modes. Did they introduce any new guns or weapons into this season that you saw or read about so far?
Not that I know of. They made a change to one or two, maybe something about ammo loadout or the way you reload or something like that. But it was something at a very like low level of detail that like I think would only be like recognized or would only make a difference to a veteran.
Yeah,
but I don't think they like rolled out. I don't recall any rollout of new weapons or new gear. Which, to be quite honest, I feel like that's almost with Halo Infinite and the way the gameplay's implemented. I would be more interested in a new piece of gear rollout that again kind of changes the dynamic of gameplay. Kind of in the way like Rainbow Six does when you get operators that that are created and deployed with like a new piece of gear that can just kind of change the whole dynamic of the battlefield. Same thing in Apex, right? Yeah. When you have a superpower that comes onto the battlefield that just like radically changes. I can't remember what her name. What was one of the first characters that they rolled out who's supposed to be like a daughter of. She's a scientist or whatever, and is a daughter, or an engineer, and is a daughter of like a Titanfall 2 character or something like that. Oh
yeah, I forgot her name. Yeah, she's got like the jetpack. Yeah.
Yeah, but like whatever
one of her abilities.
Yeah, but one of her superpowers, which was basically to like drop like a defensive structure or something like that. Just what I remember during the brief time that I played is like that just radically changed the whole dynamic of like an engagement with an enemy squad that you encountered. In that it forced them to come to you and get you rather than kind of be able to hang out back at range and try and pick you off from a distance. So that I'd be more interested to see in Halo Infinite. The saving grace of Halo Infinite is, I think, two things. It does still have great gameplay and great gunplay. and the maps that are good are really good. And right now, because there's the weird intermix of veterans who have been on it for 20 years versus, like, I go into my, and again, I have not been a lifelong Halo Infinite player, but I understand when I force somebody to drop Spanker or Sniper to pick it up. I go into matches and maps with people who are on there playing, and, like, when I get killed, they just run right by me and don't pick up, like, the super weapon. And I'm like,
yeah.
What the heck is that? And then I tell my teammates, and they come over to where I got killed, and they pick it up, right? And I'm like, okay, whatever. So there's a right now, from a player base, there's I think a really nice mix of, you know, a spreading out of, like, the people who are kind of knowledgeable about the game. Now, again, that creates a dynamic that I've talked to DBQ about, which is, like, you never know when you go into the match and you're going to find one of these squads that has been playing Halo for 20 years, and you're just going to get spanked to oblivion.
Yeah.
So that happens, but the saving grace is I think now there's a nice spread amongst skill levels. I can't remember if that game has skill-based matchmaking or not. I need to look at that.
I don't remember.
Okay.
It always seemed to be pretty even, though, when I played initially. So,
right.
I mean, that was, you know, when it first came out, though.
We've had some matches where, I mean, I've had matches I've won by, like, a lopsided 20-point difference. And then I've been in some matches where we just got handled, and, like, it was like a 16-point differential. So I'm not sure if it's SBMM or not. So there's that. But the other thing I think that's the saving grace is, and there's a lot of question and concern and conversation about Halo Infinite winding up being a failure and whether or not it's irrecoverable. I'm still going to contend that what I believe is that there's only so many of these games that the market is going to support. Halo Infinite's adhesiveness is based on its lore and the background that people have in it. We had a discussion, we had an argument a few weeks ago, not on this show, but on another show, about, like, this whole thing of, like, there were more people playing the MCC on Steam than Halo Infinite. But I'm like, and there was, you know, and I made an argument, and there were some people who disagreed, like, well, hey, like, everybody who's left Halo Infinite hasn't gone back to the MCC. Halo players who aren't happy with Halo Infinite, I'm even more confident now, are going back to Halo the MCC. Because the reason they're invested in it is the lore and in Master Chief and in that world. And they're not the type of players who are going to leave and go off and play Call of Duty or Apex. Those aren't their worlds. You know, granted, that's not a universal truth, but some percentage, right, of that is going to be true. I don't think that those players, even though part of me is saying, they're not leaving the Halo world, I don't know that those players are going off, are complete loss to Halo Infinite that can never be regained until something else comes out on the market that is big, has a huge player base, and provides an equivalent amount of interest. So the potential for Halo Infinite to hang in there is that nothing else comes along that's as big as Halo to suck all the air out of the room. And right now, looking at what people have in pipeline, I just don't know what that might be. Except for, one of these, Sony properties, where they're saying they're going to make 10 games as a service, but I don't know when the first one's going to come out or be available. But I think that's what it's going to take. I think it's going to take a huge property with a huge backing, and that garners a very large player base very quickly, and that, like I said, kind of sucks all the air out of the room to create a scenario with Halo Infinite that is untenable and can't be recovered. So I don't know. We'll see if that's true. I just, it's hard to tell what the breaking point. For me personally, as a new player, there's enough there for me to be interested. But again, I'm the person who says I never get involved with any game that I can't walk away from in 30 seconds or less. So, it's okay for me to hang in. I don't know that it has those hooks for people who have been, playing for a long time. But even as I've been talking to some of those players are saying, yeah, we're going to go play Halo 5. Right? So they're still in the Halo world, and I would contend if Halo Infinite turns it around, there's a chance that those customers come back.
Yeah. Yeah, I was trying to do a search real quick, and there's no definitive yes or no whether it has matchmaking or not. At least not from an official source. So I don't know how that works right now. I have to look into it a little bit more, see how that works. All right. Real quick, I've been playing Ark, of course, as usual. Just going through building my bases and taming my animals, just grinding basically. Kind of, I think I'm on level 80 right now. I believe when I checked earlier today. I think there's 100 levels as the cap. 100 level is the cap. So it's slow going now because I'm way up there. So I don't update as often as I was. So and as you go up in level, you can unlock different um, things to craft. So like you start with like just like wood stuff, and then you can go to stone and metal and stuff like that. So I'm kind of getting up there where I can get like more metal stuff and actually do like excuse me, generators, and have like a refrigerator to make my food last longer and stuff like that. So it's going, but it's slow going. And while I'm doing that, upgrading myself, I'm actually trying to update my different tames just to get them stronger and be able to hold more stuff. So I'm going through playing that. Still with my son too. I'll jump on with him every once in a while. And then really the only other game that I've been playing this past week, other than the Nintendo Switch Sports, was I went to jump back into Human Fall Flat, which is kind of a physics kind of puzzle game where you're kind of this blobby guy going through these levels, just trying to get from point A to point B, and there's different obstacles and stuff like that. It's been on everything, I believe, PC and all the consoles and all that. But I kind of fell off because I got stuck on the second stage on this part, and then finally I was able to get past this kind of like the swinging part. We have to swing, over this kind of canyon and get across the other side. And I don't know why, but I couldn't figure it out before. But of course, you walk away from stuff and you come back to it, and it just clicks. So I did that. I was able to get through that. Now I'm starting to slowly progress through this level that I'm on now, the second level. And it was kind of fun little game. It's a co-op game too. I haven't played it with anybody yet though. I don't know if it's online co-op. Probably. I don't know if it's on online co-op on the Switch. Sometimes they kind of take that mode out, but just kind of playing through that. So, any questions or anything on those two games?
No. Nope.
Okay, cool. All right, so kind of round out the episode. Let's go through our picks plays for the coming month or for the next few weeks. Explore the metaverse. Spend some time playing a game that treads on any way on the concept of the metaverse. At the most basics, this can be a famous personality as a key voice actor, or a famous actor being incorporated via mocap, all the way to modern takes of LTEs and LTMs featuring characters, other media IPs, or intermixing of products, personalities, and IP. Looks like DB is going to be playing Warzone, the new, I don't know if the season came out yet, but it's the Godzilla versus King Kong, which is kind of interesting. I kind of want to jump in just to see what's actually going on with that. And then Game Logic, I don't know if you had any thoughts yet on the game you might play.
I don't. I originally had Command and Conquer Remastered down, but since, like I said, I've kind of juggled what my whole playlist generation algorithm is going to look like. I backed that out, so we'll have to see how it plays out over the month.
Okay, cool. And yeah, I'm still trying to figure out. I've been kind of busy lately, so I haven't had as much time, and obviously playing Ark, that's pretty much a full-time gaming session right there because there's so much to do in there. So I'm not sure. I might. I hate to do this, but I might just go to Fortnite on this one, even though I've probably used that in multiple times in the past. But I might have to kind of just default to that one, at least for now, unless I can find something in my library, which I don't know if I really have anything with anybody famous in there. Although I don't know. I'll think about it. But that's it for this episode, number 240. We're halfway through the year, so which means we should start getting more news stories coming through with the new game releases coming out this year and the next year or two. So, any other comments or anything you're gonna be playing here soon?
Nope. I guess from here I'll be going to Crusader Kings 3 and Warframe. So that's what should be occupied of me the next week.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll be interested to see what your Warframe playing is because every once in a while I'll jump in with like a friend, and I have no idea what's going on. Again, we'll just try to get into a mission, and I just play it. I do like the gameplay, just the game mechanics in the game. It's really cool. So
yeah, the thing I've picked up on this week is do not start the new war unless you're committed to following all the way through, because you cannot get back. So if you
good piece of advice there.
Yeah.
All right. So that's it for episode number 240. Join us next week. Hopefully DB will be back, as he will be hosting next week's episode, and we should all three of us be here. Thank you, Game Logic, for being with me, and once again having a great show and being the man behind the scene, getting us online and everything. So please take care of yourselves out there. Take care of each other. Play lots of games, man. There's a ton of games nowadays, and there's no shortage of something you can play. So if you have anything that you might want us to play at some point, maybe for Pix Plays, go ahead and drop us a comment. Otherwise, we will see you next time, and thanks for watching.
Abu Qatar